to this week's portion is we have the special reading of the Parah. So let's go to chapter 19, verse 1. This is the words that God spoke to Moshe and Aaron, saying, "Those chukas Torah. These are the chukat of the Torah. This is the chukat of the Torah that Hashem commanded us, saying, take for yourself a cow that is a duma, which is red, tamima, perfect. Asher ein bamum, it has no blemish. Asher lo ala aleha ol, that did not have a burden upon it. It did not have a burden. And what is the purpose of taking this? This is what we need in order to be purified from having come in contact with a dead body. So what does Rashi say? Why is this called right away? This is the chukat Torah. This is the chuk, the law of the Torah. Rashi tells us the reason why. Now we have another idea of a reference. Before we refer to the evil inclination, now we have the Satan. What's the difference between the evil inclination and the Satan? Both of them are amorphous topics, concepts, but I think the Satan represents an outside voice which is coming to cause us and prevent us from sinning, whereas the evil inclination is an inside voice that's preventing us from sinning. Meaning outside voice, let's say a Twitter or Instagram post that makes fun of what we're trying to do. Whereas the Yetzer Hara is somebody, like in the morning we're saying, oh, I'm going to sleep through the morning prayers. I need my 9 hours of sleep. You don't need 9 hours of sleep. So you say, I need my 9 hours of sleep. I'm going to sleep through the morning prayers. No, it's a little too much for you. Sorry. So the Rambam says you're supposed to sleep 8 hours a night. That's what the Rambam says. And his son says, in my life, I never saw him sleep 6. But the point is, 9 you certainly don't need, unless your doctor tells you. Then listen to your doctor. So this is the law of the Torah. So what is it called? The chukas Torah. So Rashi says, Lefisha Satan v'umas ha'olam monin es Israel, because the Satan and the nations of the world are harassing the Jewish people, saying, Ma mitzvah hazot. What ma mitzvah hazot? What is this mitzvah? They're laughing at it. I remember we were studying with somebody who he never studied about the red heifer before. He skipped it in his school growing up. He says, "What? There's a red cow?" He was in shock. So they're making fun of this. They're saying, what is this mitzvah? They're making fun of it. Matam yeshba. What reason is there to it? It doesn't make any sense. Therefore, the Torah calls it a chok, a statute. It's a decree. You have no permission. We have no permission to question it. So at the end of the day, this is a fundamental concept of our faith that we question, like we say on Pesach. A lot of this is so that the children may ask. Why do we search for the chametz? So the children may ask. But at the end of the day, there are certain things which we can't question. And what is that? That's faith. At the end of the day, there has to come a time that we accept. And that's what the red heifer is, this idea that there's a limit to the questions. And there are certain mitzvot which are not easily explained. And in order to be spiritually prepared for the holiday of Pesach, we read this passage beforehand. And not only that, especially this passage of the red heifer is read after somebody has come in contact with the dead, and they therefore suffer probably a loss, so therefore they need to spiritually and ritually prepare themselves, and the way they do so is by accepting upon themselves a ritual which can't be questioned, and that's because the death often we can't understand it, we don't explain it, we can't get to the reasoning for it. So there's a ritual which can't be explained, which is necessary for a person to go through in order to be purified. And so that's the idea, that our purification will come only through acceptance. Submission through acceptance. Okay, so you take this red heifer. This is the law of the Torah. You shall take it for yourself. So Rashi says, what is the idea that you take it for yourself? Rashi says, this is a very, very powerful idea. This red heifer that Moshe is taking now will always be called by your name. Parah also Moshe b'midbar. This was the cow that Moshe made in the wilderness. We see here, by the way, a problem with the ashes, with the red heifer that they're gathering in Israel to slaughter now, because here it's telling us that every red heifer in the future will have some of the ashes of Moshe Rabbeinu's red heifer. Every red heifer in the future will have some of the ashes of Moshe Rabbeinu's red heifer mixed in. All future red cows were ascribed to Moshe, in that their ashes had some of the ashes of the cow that Moshe prepared mixed with them. That's what Rashi says in the Gemara in Pesachim 78a. This teaches us a very important idea that when we want to take upon ourselves understanding this faith, this ritual and spiritual cleansing ceremony, we have to recognize with humility, the only way we could do it is by leaning upon the tradition of Moshe Rabbeinu. It has to come with a little bit of the ashes of Moshe's cow mixed in. Now we have to rely upon the tradition and the teachings of Moshe Rabbeinu in order to get there. That's the idea. Take for yourself that when we prepare the red heifer, we're going to have a big problem if they prepare it just today on these cows, because how are they going to mix in some of Moshe's ashes? It's not just technical; it's a spiritual concept that we have to trace ourselves back to the cow of Moshe in order to achieve full atonement. And then what is it called? It's called Parah Aduma Timima, a perfectly red cow. Meaning to say, Rashi says it has to be perfect in its redness. Shetehi Timima Bad Mimus. So this teaches us Shem Hayu Bashtei Sarot Shecharot Psula. Now let's say this cow had 2 black hairs on it. It would be disqualified. If the cow had 2 black hairs on it, it would be disqualified. It needs to be perfectly red, but not perfectly red. 1 hair is not disqualifying. It needs 2 to disqualify it. And then Asher Lo, it can't have ever carried anything. It can't have mated. It has to be unmated, and it can never have carried a burden on it. Nobody can lean on it. Then we'll have done work. That'll disqualify it. Says the next verse, you shall give it to Elazar, the Kohen, and you shall slaughter it outside the camp. This is one of the unique ideas of the red heifer, is that it's such an important part of the purification for the temple, but the slaughter of it has to happen outside the temple. It can't take place in the temple. Now, so you give it to Elazar the Kohen, and he takes it outside the camp, and you slaughter it in front of him. Now here we have an interesting law that you give the Kohen, that you give the cow to Elazar. Why not to Aaron? Why don't you give it to Aaron? So Rashi tells us, mitzvata piskan, that the mitzvah to slaughter this cow was not by the high priest himself, but it was done, or the mitzvah to carry out this commandment was done by the deputy, not by the main one. This sacrifice is about humility, about acceptance. It's not done by the main one. And then it says, and you slaughter it in front of him. Who's slaughtering it in presence of whom? Here too, we have a very powerful idea. That Rashi says that a non-Kohen can engage in this. You don't even need to be a Kohen to be the one to slaughter it. That anyone can do this. Anyone could do this. Anyone could do this, not just a Kohen. Hold on 1 second. Okay, so now let me just say one more idea here. It says, then you take this, Elazar shall take from the blood on his finger, Vizah, and he sprinkles it towards the entrance to the tent 7 times. By the way, so where would this be done today? On the Mount of Olives. They would slaughter it and then take some of the blood and you sprinkle it. You stand to the east of Jerusalem, i.e., Rashi says on the temple, basically be on the Mount of Olives, and you face the entrance and then you sprinkle it with the blood 7 times. So Rashi is saying that this is referring to the cows in the future. So that's what Rashi is basically mentioning here. Anyway, well, we don't have time to get fully into the rituals of the red heifer, but I wanted to at least raise awareness that this Shabbos is parashas Parah. Some are of the opinion that it's a biblical obligation to hear the passage being read. So I want to encourage everybody to hear the passage being read. And anyway, if anybody has questions, I'm happy to address.